Hello there, I'm Nicholas, and this is On Listening with Chi Rising Studio. Thank you for joining me today. Well, here we are, episode 10, at the end of a first season. I feel like we've been on quite a journey exploring the many facets of listening. Today, as we wrap up this first season, I'd like to talk about something that I think brings together many of the themes we've already touched on: the balance between active and receptive communication, the yin and yang of listening. In TCM, there's this beautiful and often misunderstood concept of yin and yang, two complementary forces that create harmony when they're in balance. These forces are at play everywhere, from the natural world to our engagements with others. First, let's think about the yang aspect of listening. This is what we might call active listening. It's when we're fully engaged, asking questions, offering feedback, and actively participating in a conversation. Imagine you're having a discussion with someone about their new job. You might find yourself leaning forwards, your mind buzzing with curiosity, asking questions like, how do you feel about your new colleagues? What's the boss like? That's yang listening in action. Active, engaged, almost driving the conversation forwards with interest and inquiry. But here's the thing. Whilst that kind of active listening can be great, it's not everything. And that's where yin comes in. Yin listening is more receptive. It's about creating space, being fully present, sometimes without doing or saying anything. It's when we allow ourselves to just absorb what the other person is saying, without immediately formulating our response or our next question. Think about those times when you're with someone you're really comfortable with, and there's a lull in the conversation. It's not an awkward silence, it's a comfortable one. You're both just there, present. That's yin listening. It's receptive, open, allowing. Imagine someone's going through a tough time. In these moments, instead of asking a bunch of questions or trying to offer advice, sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is just listen. Create a space where they can share whatever they need to, without feeling any pressure to respond in a certain way. The silence between their words can be just as important as what's being said. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The real magic happens when we learn to dance between these two energies, the active yang and the receptive yin. It's not about choosing one or the other, but about finding a flow between them. You're in a conversation. Maybe you start off with yang, asking questions, showing your interest and passion, but then you notice that the other person seems to have more to say than you first expected. So you lean into yin. You pull back a bit, create some space. You're still fully present, but you're allowing them to explore their thoughts without interruption. Then maybe you sense that they're looking for some engagement from you. So you bring a bit of yang back in. You ask a thoughtful question or offer a reflection on what they've just said. It's this constant, subtle back and forth, this balance between active and receptive, that can make our listening and our conversations so much richer. being aware of these two aspects of listening can make us much more attuned to the needs of the person we're engaging with. Sometimes people need our active engagement to help them explore their thoughts. Other times they just need a compassionate, receptive presence. Of course, the tricky part is knowing when to shift between these energies. It's not an exact science, it's more of an art. It requires us to be really present, to pay attention not just to the words being said, but to the energy of the conversation, to the non-verbal cues, to the subtle shifts in tone and body language. It's a bit like learning to dance, really. At first, you might feel a bit clumsy, stepping on toes as you try to figure out when to lead and when to follow. But with practice, it starts to feel more natural. You develop a sort of conversational intuition. Ultimately, this dance between active and receptive listening is about connection. It's about creating the conditions for real understanding and empathy to flourish. And in a world that often feels increasingly divided, I feel this kind of deep, balanced listening is more important than ever. At its core, the interplay between yin and yang in listening reflects the fundamental duality of our very existence. Just as day gives way to night and action is followed by rest, our communication naturally flows between expression and reception. This rhythm is not just a matter of taking turns speaking and listening. It's about the quality of our presence in each moment. When we embody the yang aspects of listening, we're not just hearing words, but actively engaging with them. We're creating a kind of energetic field of inquiry. Our questions, our body language, our focused attention, all these elements come together to create a space where ideas can be explored and expanded. It's as if we're providing a trellis for the vine of conversation to grow upon. But yang listening, for all its power, can become overbearing if it's not balanced with yin. Yin listening is often misunderstood as passive, but it's far from passive. It's a deep, receptive alertness. Imagine the surface of a still lake, reflecting everything around it with perfect clarity. This is the quality of yin listening. We become a clear, open vessel, allowing the speaker's words, emotions, and unspoken messages to flow into us without resistance. This yin state can be challenging to maintain in our fast-paced, results-driven culture. We're often conditioned to always be doing something, to demonstrate our engagement through constant verbal or physical feedback. But in yin listening, our very stillness, our complete presence, becomes a powerful affirmation for the speaker. The magic happens when we learn to flow between these two states. It's like a dance where sometimes we lead, sometimes we follow, but we're always in tune with our partner. This fluidity allows us to meet the needs of the moment. Interestingly, this balance doesn't just affect the quality of our external interactions, it also shapes our internal landscape. When we practice balancing yin and yang in our listening, we're also cultivating a more balanced approach to our own thoughts and feelings. Think about how often we interact with that inner voice. Sometimes we interrogate our thoughts, challenging them, examining them from every possible angle. This is yang listening turned inward. Other times we simply observe the mental chatter, letting thoughts arise and pass without engagement. This is yin listening to ourselves. Both of these internal states are valuable, but problems can arise when we get stuck in one or the other. If we're always in yang mode with ourselves, we might become overly critical or analytical, never allowing for the quiet wisdom that can emerge from simply being with our experiences. But on the other hand, if we're always in yin mode internally, we might lack the self-reflection necessary for growth and change. By cultivating a balance between these internal listening styles, we develop a richer, more nuanced relationship with ourselves. We become able to challenge our assumptions when necessary, but also to sit with uncertainty and allow insights to emerge organically. This internal balance then reflects outwards, enhancing our ability to truly hear others. When we're at peace with both the active and receptive aspects of our own minds, we're better equipped to hold space for the full spectrum of another person's expression. But it's not just this. This practice of balanced listening can profoundly affect our view of the world. In the yin state, we open ourselves to perspectives that might be completely different from our own. We can create space for complexity and even contradiction. Whilst in the yang state, we engage with these new ideas, interrogating them with our existing understanding. Over time, this interplay can lead to a more holistic, nuanced view of the world. We become less rigid in our opinions, more open to the validity of diverse experiences. This doesn't mean we abandon our own beliefs or principles, but rather that we hold them with an open hand, always ready to refine and expand our understanding. In a very real sense, practicing this balance in our listening is a way of embodying the Taoist principle of wu wei, or non-doing. This doesn't mean inaction, but rather aligned action that flows with the natural rhythm of things rather than forcing or resisting. When we listen with balanced yin and yang, we're not trying to control the conversation or even impose our will. Instead, we're aligning ourselves with the natural flow of communication. Sometimes that flow calls for active engagement. Other times, receptive openness. By attuning ourselves to this rhythm, our interactions become more harmonious, more effective, and ultimately more fulfilling. It's worth noting that this balance isn't a fixed point we reach, but a dynamic equilibrium we continually navigate. Some conversations might require more yang energy, others more yin. The art is in recognizing what's needed moment by moment, and having the flexibility to shift accordingly. As we cultivate this flexibility, we may find that it extends beyond our listening habits. We might notice ourselves becoming more adaptable in other areas of life, better able to respond to challenges with either decisive action or patient acceptance as the situation requires. In essence, by practicing the balance of yin and yang in our listening, we're not just improving our communication skills, we're training ourselves in the art of harmonious existence, with ourselves, with others, and with the world around us. I want to thank you for being on this journey with me. Your willingness to explore these ideas, to think deeply about how we listen and communicate gives me a great sense of hope. It reminds me that even in small ways, each of us has the power to create more understanding in the world. I'm excited to announce that we'll be continuing our exploration in Season 2 after a 2-week break, where we'll be diving into the 5 elements of TCM and how they relate to our theme of listening. There is so much to discover, and I can't wait to share it with you. Until then, I hope you have many conversations rich with understanding and connection. Thank you very much for joining me today. Until next time, this is Nicholas. If you found value in this episode, please consider sharing it with a friend who might also find it interesting. Your support helps us continue to create this space for learning and growth. You can find out more about our studio and the podcast at chirising.studio.